Thank you very much, Aero, for this very nice introduction. Dear delegates, I'd like to welcome you also to this session on the once-only principle. I'm here to set a little bit the scope, the scenery for the once-only principle. Then we have two keynote speakers session already from the European Commission, and then subsequently we'll get the the Estonian perspective from Lukas Ilves. What I would like to tell you first about the once-only principle, we have heard before a little bit of history, governments, public administration, trying to simplify procedures for the benefits of the citizens. And well, this idea, this topic of reducing administrative burden has very strongly been progressed and fostered, supported for the development from the European Commission. And it has found its way into the current e-government action plan of 2016-2020. And we see here the short snapshot from the definition of the e-government action plan. This principle is one among 7, interoperability by default, digital by default, etc. Maybe Sash will tell more about that. And the once-only principle says to ensure that citizens and businesses supply the data that they need to provide to governments only once to the public administration, so reducing that administrative burden, not needing to repeatedly having to deliver this kind of data again and again. And then among the government agencies, also getting the agreement and the simplification that we share this information among the governments for the benefits and the value for the citizens. As well as, of course, also then taking into consideration, having in mind the respective data protection and privacy regulations to protect the citizens, of course, and the businesses. I have a small video that should show the principle, how it should work, and then we'll go on.
Modern life is so exciting. But in today's complex world, you have to deal with a lot of bureaucracy. Imagine you're getting married. First, you need a marriage certificate. If your name changes, you must get a new passport. You will probably have to file for a status change with the tax authorities too. Those are separate applications, which means giving the same information repeatedly to each authority. A lot of work, even if done electronically. And it gets more complicated when you deal with public administrations across borders, also in the European Union. What if there was a way to get all this done easier and quicker? This is the goal of the once-only principle. It enables government agencies and public administrations with the means to reuse the information citizens have already supplied to them, so you don't have to provide the same information over and over again. Under the once-only principle, different public administrations can share information that is already available to them amongst each other, even with other EU member states. Citizens need less time and effort to complete administrative processes. But the once-only principle does not simply make life easier for citizens. Public administrations can also work faster, more transparently and efficiently. The once-only principle needs to be designed with privacy and data protection for citizens' information in mind. All information must be strongly secured, both technologically and legally, and most importantly, with the consent of the citizens themselves. By correctly applying the once-only principle, it can contribute to building a smart, inclusive and effective European e-society with citizens in the driver's seat whenever their personal data is involved.
Yeah, with this vision, we certainly have a lot to do to achieve its implementation to the full extent, and particularly across borders, across our European Union, to achieve the objectives of the digital single market and the e-government action plan, or the digital agenda overall of the European Union. In order to bring forward these objectives implementation, the European Commission has is currently funding 2 projects that are funded from the Horizon 2020 program. The one is the Once-Only Principle project. It's coordinated by Robert Wimmer from the Tallinn University of Technology, so from Estonia. It's a large consortium which aims at implementing through pilots a wide federated infrastructure architecture to bring forward the Once-Only Principle implementations for businesses. Throughout our workshop that Eero was mentioning before, you will also learn more about the Once-Only Principle. Just to mention here the overall objectives, exploring and demonstrating the Once-Only Principle through pilots in cross-border data exchange, and there is reducing administrative burdens for the businesses. To pilot this implementation, there are 3 areas of piloting, which will be certainly introduced later in more detail. One is cross-border e-services for business mobility, for example, in the public procurement area or in terms of mandates. Then updating company data in business registers and sharing that kind of information across the EU. And the third pilot is on ship and crew certificates, ships moving around and then entering different member states of the Union and then having to share data. And this all should be simplified through the implementation of the Once-Only Principle. The other project which I'm coordinating is SCOOP4C, a stakeholder community for the Once-Only Principle for the citizens. It is a coordination and support action, so we are aiming at introducing and bring together different stakeholders that are currently already implementing, for example, in the national environments, as we will see later on from the Estonian case, the Once-Only Principle. But not only Estonia is working on that, many European member states are already intensely working on that. So we try to bring together these different stakeholders from those that own base registers, those that do data integration, those that aggregating and providing data to other governments in the future, etc. Just to name a few stakeholders, besides, of course, the public servants in public administrations, as well as the citizens or the companies on the other side as a data user, data provider and data consumer. So we are collecting a number of best practice cases in an online database. We would like to invite you to our stakeholder community. We have some material here also in front, but also outside, where you can learn more about our stakeholder community and how to join. And based on the cases, we want to extract and understand what are the enablers and the barriers for the Once-Only Principles in order then to draw a roadmap of how can we implement this Once-Only Principle for citizens based on also the findings that we get and the developments that are being brought forward through the TOOP project. So we are collaborating closely, and further works that is being going on the European Commission side. Yeah, just to mention a few barriers or enablers, and we need to see this always from 2 sides. On the one side, the barrier, like political commitment. If it is not there, it's certainly a barrier. If it is there, it's an enabler to bring forward the implementation of the Once-Only Principle. Organizational commitment, collaboration. Governments need to work together, so they need collaboration agreements. They need the will also and the structures to enable this kind of collaboration for sharing and reusing data across governments. A legal framework to be in place to enable this sharing and reusing of data on the one side, but also to ensure that the data protection and the privacy regulations are followed up properly. Of course, for the data sharing, we need semantic standards. If they are not in place, we have a barrier. We cannot exchange the data as we want. If we have them in place, of course, this is the key enabler, and so many initiatives on semantic standardizations are very important for the Once-Only Principle implementation. Then we have, of course, in order to, in particularly across borders, transmit data from one administration to the other, we need the proper secure data exchange mechanisms, e-delivery, secure networks, etc. And if these are not in place, of course, it's also a barrier. Collaboration governance is another aspect that we need to think of. It's not that only one organization can control and master everything. We need to work together in this sharing and reuse principle, and for this we need appropriate governance mechanisms, and altogether then this should also contribute to increase transparency and trust for citizens and businesses. Good. That's a point where I would like then to hand over to our keynote speakers. Both of them will give us an overview of the initiatives on the European side, first by Sasha Novaretti and then Lukas Ilves from the Estonian side. I just want to also tell you how you can further engage with us. We are running several stakeholder workshops across Europe. The next ones are planned, so one in Athens, another one in Vienna, probably one in Berlin. We will have a conference in Berlin. We have an online stakeholder community. We invite you to join. Help us then to collect cases about once-only principles. We have already some 40, 50 cases there from different countries, and we would like to learn more, of course, for both businesses and citizens. And yes, that's what I wanted to thank you.
Thank you very much. And here is a small
thank you.
expression of gratitude for you as well.